While my sister tried on her wedding dress, I heard my parents say they'd use my college fund to pay for it. They thought I was still asleep in the guest room, but I caught every word through the vent, including, she was never going to make it anyway. Right then, I knew my life would never be the same. Hi there. I'm Melissa, 32, a financial analyst with an accounting degree that I worked my butt off to earn. Not that my parents ever seemed to notice or care. I'll never forget that Saturday morning in spring. My sister Caroline was getting married in 3 months, and my parents had invited me to their house for the weekend to help with wedding preparations. Caroline had picked up her wedding dress the day before, and everyone was excited to see her try it on. Everyone except me, that is. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. But Caroline has always been the golden child, the pretty one, the social butterfly, the one who needed more support because she wasn't academically gifted like me. At least that's what my parents always said. I'd flown in from Chicago the night before and was staying in the guest room. That morning, I woke up early but decided to stay in bed a bit longer. The house was quiet, and I was enjoying the rare moment of peace before the wedding chaos began. That's when I heard voices coming through the heating vent near my bed. My parents' voices, drifting up from the kitchen directly below. The wedding venue wants the final payment by next week, my dad said. I know, my mom replied, sounding stressed. It's so much more than we budgeted for. How are we going to manage this? Well, my dad hesitated. I've been thinking. What about Melissa's college fund? I froze. My college fund. The one my grandparents had set up for me. The one I'd been planning to use for my MBA next fall. But that's Melissa's money, my mom said, though her voice lacked conviction. It's not like she really needs it, my dad replied. She's already got a good job. And let's be honest, she was never going to make it anyway. Not in that competitive program she's applying to. She's smart, but she's not that smart. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Not that smart. I'd graduated summa cum laude. I was in the top 5% at my company. I'd been preparing for this MBA program for years. And Caroline needs this wedding, my mom chimed in, her resistance crumbling. You know how important this is to her. She finally found someone who appreciates her. Exactly. Melissa will understand. She always does. She's the practical one. I lay there, completely still, as they continued to discuss how they would access my fund, my future, to pay for my sister's excessive wedding. A wedding that had already grown from a modest celebration to an extravagant affair with a designer dress, a 5-star venue, and a guest list of over 300 people. Just then, I heard Caroline's voice joining them. Is Melissa still asleep? She asked. Yes, honey. She's in the guest room, my mom replied. Good. I want to try on my dress without her watching. She always has this look, you know, like she's judging everything. She's just jealous, sweetie, my dad said. Don't worry about her. Jealous? Of what? A relationship with a man who seemed more interested in my sister's family connections than in her? A wedding that was draining my parents financially? A life built on appearance rather than substance? I heard footsteps and rustling as Caroline presumably began to try on her dress. Oh, it's perfect, my mom gushed. You look like a princess. It better be perfect for what it cost, my dad muttered, though his voice still held affection. Don't worry, Daddy. You won't even miss that money once you see me walking down the aisle. That money, my future. Right then, I made a decision. I quietly reached for my phone and opened my banking app. If they thought I was still asleep, I had time to protect what was rightfully mine. You see, when my grandparents set up that college fund, they had made me a co-owner once I turned 25. My parents had forgotten that detail, but I hadn't. I had access. And in that moment, as I listened to them plot to steal my future to fund my sister's fairy tale, I transferred every penny of that college fund to my private account, $47,932. 16. Not enough for the full MBA program, but enough to make a significant dent in the tuition. Enough to matter. Enough to protect. The transaction completed just as I heard my mom say, "We'll talk to Melissa about it tomorrow. Frame it as helping her sister. She'll agree. She always does." Not this time. I lay back on the bed, heart pounding, and formulated a plan. I wouldn't confront them, not yet. I'd play along, pretend I knew nothing, and observe. I'd always been good at observing, at analyzing patterns and behaviors. My analytical mind, the one my father had just dismissed as not that smart, was already working, calculating, planning. When I finally came downstairs an hour later, I was the perfect supportive sister. I oohed and awed over Caroline's wedding dress photos. I smiled and nodded as they talked about the venue, the flowers, the band. "We're so glad you're here to help, Melissa," my mom said, squeezing my hand. "Caroline needs your level head with all these decisions." "Of course," I replied, smiling. "That's what sisters are for, right?" That evening, my dad pulled me aside. "Your sister's wedding is turning out to be quite expensive," he began, his tone casual. "I can imagine," I replied, equally casual. "We're considering some financial adjustments to make it work." I nodded, waiting. "Your college fund. You're not really planning to use it anytime soon, are you? You've got such a good job already." I looked him straight in the eye. "Actually, Dad, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I'm applying for an MBA program this fall." His face fell. "Oh, well, that's wonderful, sweetheart. But maybe you could postpone it, just for a year or so? Your sister's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So is my education, Dad." The conversation ended awkwardly, with my father muttering something about discussing it later and walking away. I knew what would happen next. They would check the college fund account, find it empty, and confront me. I gave them exactly 24 hours. The next morning, as I was helping Caroline address wedding invitations, my father stormed into the dining room, face red with anger. "Melissa, did you withdraw money from your college fund?" I looked up calmly. "Yes, I did." "How could you? That money was mine," I finished for him. "It was mine. Left to me by Grandma and Grandpa. We were just borrowing it," my mother interjected, appearing behind him. "For your sister's wedding, we would have paid it back." "When?" I asked. "And with what? You're already in debt from the house renovation last year." My sister looked confused. "What's going on?" "Your sister emptied her college fund," my father said accusingly. "The money we were going to use for your wedding venue." Caroline's eyes widened. "You were going to use Melissa's money for my wedding, without asking her." At least my sister had the decency to look shocked. "It wasn't like that," my mother insisted. "We were going to discuss it with her." "After you'd already decided," I said quietly. "After you'd already determined I wasn't going to make it anyway." The room went silent. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. "What are you talking about?" my father asked, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I heard you. Yesterday morning, through the vent, I heard every word." What followed was a flurry of denials, excuses, and finally, accusations. I was selfish. I was jealous of my sister. I was ungrateful. I was misinterpreting their words. Caroline, to her credit, looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Mom, Dad, stop. If it's Melissa's money, you can't just take it." "Stay out of this, Caroline," my father snapped. "This is between us and your sister." "No," I said, standing up. "This is between me and my future." "A future you were willing to sacrifice without even consulting me." I packed my bags that afternoon. My mother pleaded with me to stay, to understand, to forgive. My father alternated between anger and awkward attempts at reconciliation. Caroline mostly stayed in her room, emerging only to give me a quick hug before I left. "I didn't know," she whispered. And I swear I didn't know. I believed her. My sister had many flaws, but dishonesty wasn't one of them. She was just oblivious, content to float through life on the cushion of my parents. Endless support and accommodation. As I waited for my Uber to the airport, my mother made one last attempt. "Melissa, please, we're family. Families help each other." I looked at her. This woman who had raised me but never really seen me. Yes, they do. But not by stealing from each other. Not by deciding someone's future isn't worth investing in. We never said that. You did, and you meant it. The Uber arrived, saving me from further conversation. I loaded my suitcase and got in without looking back. During the flight home, I cried. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I mourned the family I thought I had. The parents I thought had believed in me. The sister I thought had respected me. But amidst the grief, there was also relief. Relief at having protected my future. Relief at finally seeing the truth. Relief at standing up for myself, perhaps for the first time. Back in Chicago, I threw myself into work and my MBA application. I ignored my parents' calls and texts, responding only to Caroline's occasional messages with brief, polite replies. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from my father. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a note that simply read, "For your MBA, we still believe in you." $10,000. A fraction of what they'd planned to take. A token gesture, not a genuine apology. I deposited the check. I wasn't about to turn down money for my education, but I didn't respond to the note. A month passed. The wedding preparations continued without me. Caroline sent photos, updates, questions about whether I'd still be a bridesmaid. I was non-committal. Then came the call. Not from my parents, but from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister. "Melissa, what's this I hear about you abandoning your sister's wedding? Your mother is beside herself." I sighed. "Did she tell you why I left?" "She said you had a disagreement about money." "But Melissa, it's just money. This is your only sister's wedding. Did she tell you they planned to take my college fund without asking me? Did she tell you my father said I'd never make it anyway?" Silence on the other end. Then, "Your father said that?" "Yes. I heard them discussing it when they thought I was asleep." Another pause. "That doesn't sound like your father, doesn't it? Think about it, Aunt Susan. How many times has he dismissed my achievements? How many times has he prioritized Caroline's wants over my needs?" I could almost hear her thinking, recalling incidents from our childhood, from family gatherings. The time my academic scholarship announcement was overshadowed by Caroline's ballet recital. The time my father missed my college graduation because Caroline had a minor car accident, a fender bender that somehow required his immediate attention. I never thought of it that way," she finally admitted. "No one did, not even me, until now." After we hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was out there now, spreading beyond the confines of our immediate family. My aunt would tell my uncle, who would tell my cousins. Questions would be asked, perspectives would shift. And as for me, I had an MBA application to finish and a future to build. A future that no one, not even my parents, had the right to steal from me. But even as I focused on moving forward, a part of me wondered, what would happen when we all gathered for Caroline's wedding? Would my parents apologize? Would they even acknowledge what they'd done? Or would they, as they had so many times before, rewrite the narrative to cast themselves as the victims and me as the ungrateful, difficult daughter? Only time would tell. And I had plenty of time. Time I'd protected by listening through that vent and acting decisively. Time I'd saved for myself, for my future, for the life I deserved. A life where I would make it, despite what anyone, even my own father, believed. The weeks following my abrupt departure from my parents' house were oddly peaceful. I immersed myself in work, finalized my MBA application, and started preparing for the entrance exams. My apartment in Chicago became my sanctuary, a place where no one questioned my worth or plotted to divert my future for someone else's benefit. My phone would occasionally light up with texts from Caroline or my mother. I responded minimally, just enough to avoid being accused of completely cutting them off. My father hadn't reached out since sending that insulting $10,000 check, a sum that represented barely a fifth of what they'd planned to take from me. Then came the email that changed everything. "Congratulations, Melissa. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into our MBA program beginning this fall semester." I stared at my laptop screen, my hands trembling slightly. I'd done it. Despite my father's certainty that I wasn't going to make it anyway, I'd been accepted into one of the most prestigious MBA programs in the country. The program had an acceptance rate of just 12%, and I was part of that select group. My first instinct was to call my parents, to prove them wrong, to rub this achievement in their faces. But I stopped myself. This victory wasn't for them. It was for me. I celebrated alone that night with a good bottle of wine and takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. The next morning, I received another email, this one from the financial aid office, offering me a partial scholarship that would cover about 30% of the tuition. Combined with my saved college fund and some additional savings, I could make this work without going too deeply into debt. I was mapping out my financial plan when my phone rang. It was Caroline. "Mel, are you there?" Her voice sounded small, uncertain. "I'm here," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I need to talk to you. About the wedding. About everything." I sighed. "Caroline, I'm really busy right now. I just got accepted into my MBA program, and I'm working out the financials." "You got in? That's amazing." "I knew you would." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, which only made everything more confusing. "But Mel, please, Just hear me out. I'm in Chicago for a dress fitting. Can we meet somewhere? Just you and me, I promise." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment, one where I knew we could talk without being overheard. Caroline looked thinner than when I'd last seen her. Her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. The engagement ring on her finger, a diamond that had to be at least 3 carats, caught the light as she fidgeted with her coffee cup. "You look good," she said, attempting a smile. "Working hard as usual?" "As usual," I replied. "What's going on, Caroline? Why the urgent meeting?" She took a deep breath. "I broke up with Derek." I blinked, genuinely surprised. "You what? When?" "Last week. After I found out some things." "What things?" She looked down at her coffee. "He was only marrying me for Dad's connections. He's been trying to get a position at Dad's firm for years, and he thought marrying the boss's daughter was his ticket in." I didn't know what to say. While I'd had my suspicions about Derek's motivations, I hadn't expected Caroline to see through him. "How did you find out?" I finally asked. "I overheard him talking to his friend on the phone. Just like you overheard Mom and Dad." She gave a humorless laugh. "Apparently, our family has a real problem with private conversations being not so private." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want to see my sister hurt. "Don't be. You tried to warn me about him last Christmas, remember?" I should have listened. She twisted the ring off her finger and placed it on the table between us. "The wedding's off. I told Mom and Dad last night." "How did they take it?" Dad was furious. Not because I was hurt, but because he'd already paid the non-refundable deposit for the venue. $10,000, gone. She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly sharp. "The exact amount he sent you." The realization hit me like a wave. He didn't send me that money because he believed in me. He sent it because he'd already spent the same amount on your wedding. Caroline nodded. Mom let it slip during the argument. "They've been keeping score, Mel. Always." We sat in silence for a moment, 2 sisters coming to terms with the transactional nature of our parents' love. "There's more," Caroline finally said. "After I called off the wedding, I asked them about what happened with you, about the college fund." I stiffened. "And they tried to downplay it at first. Said you'd misunderstood, that they were just discussing possibilities. But I pushed, and eventually, Dad admitted it. He said it wasn't a big deal because you already had a good job, and were just chasing another degree to prove something." The casual dismissal of my ambitions still had the power to wound me, even secondhand. "That's when I really lost it," Caroline continued. "But I told them they'd been treating you unfairly for years, prioritizing my needs over yours, acting like your achievements were expected while mine were exceptional." "You said that?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "I did. And do you know what Dad said?" "He said I was being dramatic, that they'd always supported both of us equally." That's when I knew it wasn't just about the money or the wedding. It was about how they see us, how they've always seen us. She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "I'm so sorry, Mel. I never saw it before. I was so caught up in being the center of attention that I never noticed how they pushed you to the side. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't entirely trust this sudden insight either." "What do you want from me, Caroline?" "Nothing." "Well, not nothing. I want my sister back. I want a chance to be the kind of sister you deserved all along." "And what about the wedding? The dress? All those plans?" She shrugged. "What about them? They were for a marriage that was never going to work anyway. Besides, after our fight, Mom and Dad said they can't afford the wedding now that the venue deposit is lost and your college fund is unavailable." I felt a flicker of satisfaction at that, followed immediately by guilt. This wasn't Caroline's fault. Not entirely. "What will you do now?" I asked. "I don't know. Move out of their house, for starters. Get a job that isn't at Dad's friend's boutique. Maybe go back to school? You want to go to college?" This was unexpected. Caroline had barely graduated high school and had shown no interest in higher education. "I'm thinking about it. Not everyone's cut out for academia like you, but I could do something. Maybe interior design or event planning, something that uses my eye for detail." For the first time in our conversation, I smiled genuinely. "I think that's a great idea." We talked for another hour, really talked, in a way we hadn't since we were children. About our parents, about our futures, about the patterns we'd both been trapped in for too long. As we were saying goodbye, Caroline hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. Mom and Dad are still planning to come to Chicago next weekend. They want to clear the air with you." My stomach tightened. What exactly does that mean? I'm not sure. But after our fight, they were talking about legal options. Something about the college fund not being solely yours, despite what Grandma and Grandpa intended. They're threatening to sue me. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. I don't think they'd go that far. But Dad mentioned something about a family financial meeting with their lawyer present. Now I understood. They were trying to intimidate me, to pressure me into returning the money, or at least sharing it with them for whatever new crisis they'd created. "Thanks for the warning," I told Caroline. "And thank you for standing up for me." She hugged me tightly before leaving. That's what sisters are supposed to do, right? I watched her walk away, feeling strangely lighter despite the new threat looming on the horizon. At least I wasn't facing it alone anymore. When I got home, I made a decision. If my parents wanted a family financial meeting, I'd give them one. But it would be on my terms, not theirs. I spent the next few days preparing. I contacted my grandparents' former attorney, who confirmed that the college fund had indeed been intended solely for my education, and that my parents had no legal claim to it once I became a co-owner at 25. I gathered bank statements showing every transaction related to the account since its creation. I even prepared a PowerPoint presentation detailing the projected ROI of my MBA compared to the sunk cost of a canceled wedding. By the time Friday arrived, I was ready. I'd booked a small conference room at a local business center, neutral territory, and informed my parents via email that this would be the location of our meeting, not my apartment as they'd suggested. They arrived precisely on time, dressed formally as if for court. My mother hugged me stiffly. My father offered a curt nod. There was no lawyer with them, I noticed. Perhaps that had been a bluff. "I'm Melissa," my father began once we were seated. "We need to discuss the unfortunate situation with your college fund." "You mean the situation where you planned to take my money without asking? Then got upset when I protected what was legally mine." I kept my voice calm, professional. My mother winced. "That's not how it was, sweetheart. We were just exploring options for Caroline's wedding. We would have discussed it with you first. After you'd already decided I wasn't going to succeed in my MBA program anyway." I opened my laptop and turned it to face them, showing a screenshot of my acceptance letter. Because I did succeed, actually. I got in, with a partial scholarship. My father's expression flickered between surprise and something that might have been pride, quickly suppressed. That's wonderful, Melissa. But it doesn't change the fact that you acted impulsively by withdrawing all that money. Impulsively. I acted to protect my future after overhearing you plan to take what was rightfully mine. I pulled out the folder containing the documentation from my grandparents' attorney. Here's confirmation that the college fund was intended solely for my education and legally became mine to control when I turned 25. My mother glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "We're not disputing the legality, Melissa. We're talking about family loyalty, about helping your sister. My sister, who, by the way, has called off her wedding after discovering her fiancé was only interested in Dad's business connections." My father's face reddened. "Caroline is young and emotional. She'll come around." "She won't, actually. She's moving out, getting a job, maybe even going to college herself." "She told you this." My mother looked genuinely shocked. "We had a long talk. It seems we both had some revelations recently about the family dynamics." My father's expression hardened. "So that's it. You've turned your sister against us too." "I didn't turn anyone against anyone. I simply protected what was mine and spoke my truth. Caroline did the same. And what about everything we've done for you?" My mother's voice took on the wounded tone I knew so well. "All the sacrifices we've made, the opportunities we've given you." "Like what exactly?" I asked, genuinely curious about what they considered sacrifices on my behalf. "We paid for your undergraduate degree." "No, my academic scholarship paid for 75% of it, and I worked part-time for the rest. You contributed to my housing costs during freshman year only. We supported you emotionally through all those difficult academic programs." "Did you?" "Because I remember being told to stop studying so much and to come out of my room and be social whenever I was preparing for exams. I remember you missing my honors ceremony because Caroline had a date to the prom." My father stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We came here to resolve a financial matter, not to rehash ancient history. The financial matter is resolved, I said firmly. The money is mine, legally and morally. I'm using it for exactly what it was intended for, my education. And what about the wedding venue deposit we lost because of you? He demanded. Because of me? How exactly is Caroline's canceled wedding my fault? If you hadn't been so selfish with the money, we could have secured the venue fully. Now we've lost $10,000 for nothing. And there it was, the true reason for this meeting. Not concern for family harmony or legal questions about the college fund. They wanted me to reimburse them for the lost deposit. I closed my laptop. I'm not responsible for your financial decisions, Dad. You chose to put down a non-refundable deposit on an extravagant venue for a wedding that's now canceled. That's not on me. So you're just going to let us suffer this loss? My mother's eyes filled with tears. After everything we've done for you. I took a deep breath. I got accepted into my MBA program. I secured a partial scholarship. I'm moving forward with my education and my career. These are achievements you should be celebrating with me, not trying to undermine or profit from. We've always celebrated your achievements, my father protested. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've always expected them, dismissed them, or tried to leverage them for someone else's benefit. The conference room fell silent. My parents exchanged glances. A wordless communication I couldn't interpret. Finally, my father spoke. I think we're done here. He stood up, straightening his tie. Clearly, you've made your decision about your place in this family. My place? I echoed. What does that mean? It means you've chosen yourself over your family, over your sister, over us. I stood up too, gathering my documents. No, Dad. I've chosen not to let you choose Caroline over me. There's a difference. They left without another word, my mother dabbing at her eyes, my father's back rigid with indignation. I remained in the conference room for a long time afterward, alternately relieved that I'd stood my ground and devastated by the growing rift in my family. That evening, I received a text from Caroline. How did it go with Mom and Dad? I replied simply, about as well as expected. They're upset. They just called me, ranting about how you've changed and become cold and calculating. I winced. And what did you say? I told them maybe they should look in the mirror before criticizing anyone else's calculating behavior. Despite everything, I smiled. Thanks, sis. No problem. By the way, I found an apartment to rent. It's tiny but affordable. I'm moving in next week. Need any help? I offered. Actually, yes. If you're not too busy with MBA prep, I'll be there, I promised. We made plans for me to help her move the following weekend, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had a real ally in my sister. The next day, I received an email from my father's work address, a formal text business-like message informing me that they would be reassessing family financial arrangements in light of recent events. Specifically, they would be removing me from their will and life insurance policies. It was meant to hurt me, to punish me for my defiance. And it did hurt, but not in the way they intended. It hurt because it confirmed what I'd begun to suspect, that their love and support had always been conditional, contingent on my compliance with their expectations and priorities. I forwarded the email to Caroline with a simple question. Did you get one of these too? Her reply came quickly. No, but I'm not surprised. They're trying to divide and conquer. Standard operating procedure. Are you worried about being disinherited too? I asked. Honestly, not really. Their estate is probably more debt than assets at this point anyway. Dad remortgaged the house for the third time last year. This was news to me. What? Why? Home renovations, supposedly. But I think it had more to do with some bad investments he made. He's been stressed about money for months. The pieces started falling into place. Their desperate grab for my college fund wasn't just about favoring Caroline. It was about financial desperation. They were drowning and looking for any lifeline, even if it meant sacrificing my future. Do you think that's why they were so set on you marrying Derek? I asked. Because of his family's money. There was a long pause before Caroline's next message. I think so. Dad kept talking about how Derek's father could open doors for the family business. I thought he meant networking, but now I wonder if he was hoping for a financial bailout. The realization left me cold. Our parents hadn't just been playing favorites. They'd been playing chess, with Caroline and me as pawns in their financial survival strategy. What are we going to do? Caroline texted. I thought for a moment before replying, We're going to protect ourselves and each other. How? I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. That's what I do, remember? I solve problems. And I would solve this one, not just for myself, but for my sister too. Because if there was one thing my analytical mind was good for, it was finding patterns, identifying weaknesses, and developing strategies. My parents had unknowingly given me all the training I needed to protect myself from them. They'd taught me to be self-sufficient, to question authority, even theirs, and to look beyond the surface of any situation. Now I would use those skills to ensure that neither Caroline nor I would ever again be sacrificed on the altar of their financial mismanagement or emotional manipulation. The game had changed, and this time I was making the rules. The week following my confrontation with my parents was surprisingly productive. I finalized my MBA enrollment, secured a small additional student loan to cover remaining expenses, and helped Caroline move into her new apartment, a tiny studio in a less desirable part of town, but hers alone. As we unpacked her meager belongings, I couldn't help but notice how little she actually owned apart from clothes and makeup. "Did you leave furniture at Mom and Dad's?" I asked as we arranged her single bookshelf. Caroline shook her head. "I never really had much to begin with. Most of my furniture was actually theirs, in their house." It struck me then how different our experiences had been. I'd been accumulating my own possessions since college, building my independent life piece by piece. Caroline, despite being the favored child, had remained dependent, living in their home, working at their friend's shop, existing in their orbit. "We'll get you set up," I promised. "I have some extra kitchen stuff you can have." She smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Mel, for everything." We ordered pizza and sat on cushions on the floor, sharing a bottle of wine and stories from our childhood. The good parts. The times before we'd been fully slotted into our respective roles of achiever and beauty. "Remember when we built that fort in the backyard?" Caroline laughed. "And Dad kept telling us it wouldn't stand up to the wind, but it survived that whole thunderstorm." I nodded, smiling at the memory. "We were quite the team back then." "We could be again," she said softly. "If you want." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'd like that." As I drove home that night, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness for the years we'd lost to our parents, manipulations, anger at how they'd pitted us against each other, but also hope that Caroline and I might forge a new relationship, one based on mutual support rather than competition. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from William Henderson, subject, Financial Advisory Services, Miss Baker. "Your name was referred to me by a colleague who mentioned you might be in need of financial advisory services. I specialize in family financial disputes and asset protection. If you're interested in discussing how I might assist you, please contact me at your earliest convenience. Regards, William Henderson, CFA Henderson Financial Advisors." I stared at the email, puzzled. I hadn't mentioned my situation to anyone who might refer me to a financial advisor, unless... I called Caroline immediately. "Did you connect me with someone named William Henderson?" "Oh, yes, I meant to tell you," she replied, sounding slightly flustered. "He's Derek's cousin. We had lunch last week, just as friends," she added quickly. I mentioned our situation, and he thought he might be able to help. "You told Derek's cousin about our family financial drama." I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Not in detail," she assured me. "Just that Mom and Dad were trying to access money that wasn't theirs, and that you were protecting your educational fund. Will is completely trustworthy, Mel. And he knows things about Dad's business that might be useful." I hesitated. "What kind of things?" "I'm not sure exactly, but he hinted that there might be some irregularities in Dad's accounting practices." That got my attention. As a financial analyst, I knew exactly how damaging irregularities could be. "I'll meet with him," I decided, but just to hear what he has to say. 2 days later, I sat across from William Henderson in a downtown coffee shop. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a meticulously trimmed beard. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, extending his hand. "Caroline speaks very highly of you. She mentioned you might have information about my father's business practices," I replied, skipping the pleasantries. He nodded, unfazed by my directness. "I work primarily with small to medium businesses in the financial sector. Your father's investment firm has come up in my professional circles several times over the past year." "In what context?" "Concerns about client fund management. Specifically, the commingling of funds between different accounts. I felt a chill. That's illegal. It is, he agreed. And while I don't have first-hand evidence, the rumors are persistent enough to warrant concern. Why are you telling me this? Shouldn't you be reporting it to regulatory authorities? Henderson sipped his coffee. Without concrete evidence, making accusations against a respected firm would be professionally risky. But as a family member with financial training, you might be in a position to look more closely. I leaned back, studying him. You're suggesting I investigate my own father for financial fraud. I'm suggesting you protect yourself and your sister from potential fallout. If these rumors are true, anyone financially connected to your father could be affected when, not if, it comes to light. The implications were staggering. If my father was mismanaging client funds, it would explain their desperate need for money, their attempt to appropriate my college fund, even their push for Caroline to marry into a wealthy family. What exactly do you recommend? I asked. First, ensure complete financial separation, close any joint accounts, remove your name from any shared assets or liabilities. Second, document everything, every communication about money, every transaction, every agreement or disagreement. And third, he paused. Consider looking into his business records if you can access them legally. I don't have access to his business records. Are you sure? Henderson raised an eyebrow. Caroline mentioned you worked at your father's firm during college breaks. As an intern, years ago, I haven't had access since. But you might have information that would help identify patterns or inconsistencies. Account numbers, client names, transaction protocols. I shifted uncomfortably. Even if I did, using that information might cross ethical boundaries. More ethical than allowing clients to lose their retirement savings, he countered. More ethical than letting your sister remain financially entangled with potentially fraudulent practices? He had a point, but something still felt off about the conversation. Why are you so interested in my father's business? What's your stake in this? Henderson hesitated, then sighed. My parents were clients of your father's firm. They lost a significant portion of their retirement savings last year in what was described as an unfortunate market downturn. But the timing and pattern of losses didn't align with market movements. Now I understood. This wasn't just professional concern. It was personal. I need time to think about this, I told him. Of course. He handed me his card. Call me when you're ready to proceed. And Miss Baker, don't wait too long. These situations rarely improve with time. I left the meeting with my mind racing. Could my father really be involved in financial fraud? The accusation seemed extreme, yet it would explain so much. The remortgaged house, the desperate grab for my college fund, the push for Caroline's advantageous marriage. I needed more information before deciding how to proceed, and there was only one person who might have that information. That evening, I called Caroline. We need to talk about Dad's business. What do you know about it? Not much, she admitted. He never discussed work details with me. That was always your territory. Did you ever hear him mention clients who were unhappy? Or unusual transactions? She was quiet for a moment. There was something last Christmas. Dad got a call during dinner that upset him. I overheard him saying something about temporary allocations and promising someone their money would be restored by quarter's end. Did he mention a name? Jenkins or Jennings, I think. Why? What did Will tell you? I summarized the conversation, watching her face pale as the implications sank in. Do you think it's true? She whispered. Could Dad really be stealing from clients? I don't know, I answered honestly, but I intend to find out. The next day, I called an old colleague from my internship days at my father's firm. Angela had been the office manager then and had always been kind to me. Melissa Baker, it's been ages, she greeted me warmly. How are you? We chatted about my career and her family before I carefully steered the conversation toward my father's business. How are things at the firm? Still growing? Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Oh, you know, ups and downs. The market's been volatile. I heard there might have been some client issues recently. Someone named Jenkins or Jennings. Angela's voice became guarded. Where did you hear that? Just family talk. Dad seemed stressed about it over the holidays. Walter Jenkins pulled his entire portfolio last quarter, she said quietly. It was contentious. Your father was very upset. Do you know why? Officially, Jenkins was diversifying his investments. Unofficially, There were discrepancies in his quarterly statements that no one could explain satisfactorily. My stomach tightened. Were there other clients with similar concerns? Melissa, I shouldn't be discussing this. Your father would... Angela, please. This is important. I'm trying to understand some family financial decisions that might be connected. She sighed. There have been questions from several long-term clients and a visit from regulators last month that had everyone on edge. Regulators from the SEC? I've said too much already. Listen, Melissa, if you're financially connected to your father in any way, you might want to reconsider that arrangement. That's all I can say. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop. I had enough financial training to know what these signs pointed to. My father was likely using client funds to cover personal or business losses, hoping to replace the money before anyone noticed. It was the oldest form of financial fraud, and it almost always ended the same way, with arrest, disgrace, and ruined lives, including, potentially, mine and Caroline's. I called Henderson. I need your help. You've decided to act? He asked. Yes, but not just for myself, for my sister, and for any clients who might be affected. What's your plan? First, I need to confirm what's happening. Then, if necessary, report it to the proper authorities. And if it implicates your father in criminal activity? I took a deep breath. Then that's what happens. The next week was a blur of careful investigation. Henderson helped me compile a list of my father's clients from publicly available records and social media connections. I reached out to several prior, posing as a financial researcher conducting a survey on investment firm satisfaction. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Multiple clients reported unexplained delays in fund access, discrepancies in statements, and unusual transfer activities. None had yet filed formal complaints, but several expressed growing concern. Meanwhile, Caroline had her own discovery to share. I found something while sorting through my old papers, she told me, showing me a document she'd photographed. It's a letter addressed to Dad from the State Regulatory Board, dated 6 months ago. They were questioning his firm's reserve requirements. How did you get this? It was accidentally mixed in with some wedding vendor correspondence Mom gave me. I don't think they knew I had it. The letter confirmed that my father's firm was under preliminary investigation for potential violations of capital reserve requirements. Essentially, not keeping enough money on hand to cover client investments. This is serious, Caroline. If the firm has been operating below required reserves, it could be shut down. Dad could lose his license. At minimum, what do we do? Her voice trembled slightly. We need to protect ourselves first. Have you closed all joint accounts with Mom and Dad? Yes, last week. And I changed my mailing address for everything. Good. Now we need to decide whether to confront them or go directly to the authorities. Confront them, she said immediately. They deserve a chance to explain. I wasn't so sure, but I agreed to one final family meeting. We arranged to meet at my parents' house the following Sunday. Neutral territory was no longer an option given the sensitivity of what we needed to discuss. The day before our scheduled meeting, however, everything changed. I was preparing dinner when my phone rang. An unknown number. Is this Melissa Baker? A male voice asked when I answered. Yes. Who's calling? This is Detective James Morales with the Financial Crimes Division. We're investigating Walter Baker of Baker Investment Strategies. I understand you're his daughter. My heart raced. Yes, I am. We'd like to speak with you about your knowledge of the firm's operations. Would you be available to come to our office tomorrow morning? I'm supposed to meet with my parents tomorrow. Has something happened? The detective paused. Your father was brought in for questioning this afternoon following a complaint from a client. He's currently cooperating with our investigation, but given your financial background and former employment at the firm, we believe you might have relevant information. My father had been arrested, or at least detained for questioning. The very thing I'd been investigating was now in the hands of the authorities. I'll be there, I promised. First thing tomorrow. After hanging up, I called Caroline immediately. Dad's being questioned by financial crimes investigators. Our meeting tomorrow is canceled. Oh my God, she gasped. Have they arrested him? Not officially, I think, but they want to talk to me too. What are you going to tell them? It was the question I'd been dreading. How much did I share? How much did I protect? Where did my loyalty belong? With the truth or with my family? Everything I know, I decided, which honestly isn't much beyond suspicions and secondhand reports. Mel, Caroline's voice was small. What's going to happen to them? To Mom and Dad? I don't know, I answered truthfully. It depends on what Dad's actually done and how long it's been going on. After we hung up, I sat in my darkened kitchen, watching the city lights through my window. I'd wanted answers, wanted justice for how my parents had treated me, but not like this. Not with the potential for criminal charges and public disgrace. Yet a part of me, a part I wasn't entirely proud of, felt vindicated. My father had dismissed me, had been willing to sacrifice my future for his own purposes. Now his actions were catching up with him, and my future was secure while his was in jeopardy. Was this justice? Or just another sad chapter in our family's increasingly dysfunctional story? Tomorrow would bring answers. And perhaps, finally, the truth. The Financial Crimes Division office was sterile and intimidating. Exactly what you'd expect from a place where people's lives were dissected through spreadsheets and bank statements. I sat across from Detective Morales, a serious man with tired eyes and meticulous notes. Ms. Baker, we appreciate your cooperation, he began. To be clear, you're not under investigation. We're interested in what you might know about your father's business practices. I took a deep breath. I haven't worked for my father in years, Detective. My knowledge is limited. But you recently began asking questions about his firm, correct? Contacting clients, speaking with former colleagues, so they knew about that. Yes. I had concerns based on some family financial issues. For the next 2 hours, I detailed everything. The college fund incident, my conversations with Henderson, the client survey, Angela's revelations. I left nothing out, not even my own complicated feelings about my father. Do you know where your father is now? Morales asked when I finished. Isn't he still here? Being questioned? He was released last night. We have sufficient evidence to proceed with our investigation without detaining him. I felt a strange relief. At least he wasn't in jail. Yet. As I left the station, my phone rang. My mother, Melissa, her voice was shaking. Please come to the house. Your father. We need to talk. I found them in the living room, my father slumped in his armchair, looking decades older than when I'd last seen him. My mother perched beside him, clutching his hand, and Caroline sitting opposite, her expression grim. You talked to the investigators? My father said as I entered, not a question. Yes, and told them everything. Everything I knew, which wasn't much. They already had most of the information. He nodded slowly. One of my clients filed a complaint, Jenkins. He was always too detail-oriented for his own good. For his own good? I echoed incredulously. Or for yours? My father looked up, his eyes meeting mine directly for perhaps the first time in years. I made mistakes, Melissa. Serious ones. I moved money between accounts when investments underperformed. I told myself it was temporary, just until the market recovered. That's fraud, Dad. I know. His voice broke. I know what it is. What I am. My mother squeezed his hand. Your father was trying to keep the business afloat, to provide for us, for our future. By stealing from clients? By trying to take my college fund? The anger I'd suppressed during my police interview surged forward. I was desperate, he admitted. The firm was failing. I'd lost so much on bad investments. When your sister's wedding expenses started mounting, I saw your college fund as a solution, a way to cover one debt while I sorted out the others. And you thought I wasn't going to make it anyway? I reminded him bitterly. He flinched. I said that out of frustration, not because I believed it. I've always known you were capable, Melissa. Too capable, sometimes. Too independent. Too much like me. That stopped me. I'm nothing like you. Aren't you analytical, determined, willing to do whatever it takes to secure your future? He shook his head. The difference is, you've done it honestly. I lost my way. Caroline spoke up. Dad's firm is being shut down pending investigation. They've frozen all the accounts, including our personal ones. My mother added quietly. We have nothing, Melissa. I looked around the house I'd grown up in, the expensive furniture, the artwork, the trappings of success that had always seemed so important to my parents. What happens now? I asked. I'll likely face charges, my father said matter-of-factly. Securities fraud, at minimum, possibly wire fraud. My lawyer says cooperation is my best option for leniency. And Mom? I wasn't directly involved in the business, she said. But our assets, everything we've built, will probably be seized or liquidated to repay clients. I finished for her. The room fell silent. 4 people bound by blood and broken trust, facing a future none of us had imagined. Finally, Caroline stood up. "You can stay with me, Mom. My apartment's tiny, but we'll manage until you figure things out." My mother looked stunned. "You'd do that? After everything?" "You're still my mother," Caroline said simply. I watched this exchange, feeling simultaneously outside of it and intrinsically connected to it. My sister, once the pampered princess, was now offering shelter to our mother. Life had a strange way of redistributing roles. "I start my MBA program next month," I said into the silence. "I can help with some expenses in the meantime." My father looked up sharply. "You'd help us? After what we tried to do to you?" "I'm not helping you, Dad. I'm helping Mom and Caroline." I met his gaze steadily. "You'll have to face the consequences of your actions. That's how the world works." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I will." He hesitated, then added, "I'm proud of you, Melissa. I should have said that more often." I didn't acknowledge the compliment. It came too late, meant too little. 6 months later, my father pleaded guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud. He received a 5-year sentence, reduced from a potential 15 due to his cooperation, and the fact that he'd managed to repay some clients before being caught. My mother moved in with Caroline, taking a job as a receptionist at a dental office, her first real employment in decades. Their relationship, surprisingly, improved without my father's influence. As for me, I excelled in my MBA program, just as I'd always known I would. Sometimes, during late-night study sessions, I thought about that morning when I'd heard my parents through the vent, planning to sacrifice my future for my sister's wedding. In a strange way, I was grateful. That moment had forced me to see my family clearly, to protect myself, to stand firm in my own worth. And when I graduated with honors 2 years later, Caroline was there, cheering loudly from the audience. My mother sat beside her, more subdued but present. My father, still serving his sentence, sent a simple card. "You made it. I never should have doubted you." I didn't respond to the card. Some wounds heal, but they still leave scars. What I learned through all of this wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about boundaries, self-worth, and the courage to protect your own future, even from those who should have protected it for you. Sometimes, the family you're born into fails you. But if you're lucky, you can rebuild those relationships on healthier terms. And if you're wise, you'll never forget the sound of truth coming through an unexpected vent on a quiet spring morning.